Welcome to the Salish Sea Fellowship Sunday afternoon service from February 2nd. Our speaker is the Reverend Pam Douglas-Smith, and the title of her message is The Hidden Church of Love. We hope you enjoy this recording of our service, and we hope to see you in person some Sunday afternoon. Thanks for listening.
Good afternoon and welcome to all. Thank you, QUUF, for your prelude. We are a religious community with open hearts and open minds. We embrace the traditional principles of Unitarianism and Universalism. My name is Kendra Golden and I am the pulpit assistant today. Our speaker is the Reverend Pam Douglas-Smith, an ordained Unity minister who has worked also in special education, nursing, rehabilitation, and hospital chaplaincy. She has served as minister for Unity Center of Port Townsend since March of 2003 and has spent a lifetime studying metaphysics and mysticism. She has presented at national and international conferences and led spiritual pilgrimages in the U.S., Italy, France, and Great Britain. Reverend Pam was blessed to do several series with Ron Strange, blending Jungian thought with spiritual topics at QUUF over the years, and she is a published author and is now writing several books. And Ron needs a little addendum here. Ron?
Difficult to add to that wonderful introduction, but Pam and I, we met some years ago, and we shared an interest in the concept of the cult of the Black Virgin, which appears in southern France, and we spent some time, both of us independently, in that area. And we also did a class on the Grail legends and a while back, and we probably need to revisit those. But Judy and I were once at the Pope's house, Vatican, and on an artistic tour, not to see the Pope, but we happened to be, we went to the Sistine Chapel, and then we also found our way to the Pieta, along with about 75 or 80 other people that were surrounding it. It was deep, the crowds. And as I worked my way, tried to get closer to the front, I hear, "Is that Ron Strange?" Among all these Italian speakers and everything else, I go, what the heck is that? And I turn around, and it's Pam Douglas-Smith. So I had to tell that story. She's a good pal. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. And now we're going to light our chalice. And Karen, would you help me with these words? In this winter season of the year, we gather ourselves in to light the fire, to warm our spirits, and to kindle the flame of love and hope.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here with you all today, and I definitely feel at home. We always start our Unity services with we are a spiritual community with open hearts and open minds. And we light the universal Christ candle light to honor the divine in all of creation. And I close the service with the singing bowl that I stand in the center of circle and ring. And a number of you I remember from other groups and classes over the years, so I'm just so honored to be here. So thank you for the invitation. The reading that I want to do this morning ties in with my message about the Church of Amor, the Church of Love. This is the Cathar prophecy, and the Cathars were in the 1200s. They were mystical Christians. They were esoteric. They were Gnostic. They believed in the divine in everyone. Their perfecti were men and women, their teachers. The only gospel they carried was the Gospel of John, which is the most mystical of the Gospels. And they were the recipients of the first Catholic Church Inquisition, because the Catholic Church had a very different theological view of people and of the world. And so in 1244, there was a major martyrdom at Montségur in the south of France. And they say, at the time, they said, oh, all of the Cathars are gone now. But I met living Cathars when I was in the south of France. And as we know, when there is a spark of light, no matter how dark the darkness is, the light continues to shine. And so this is a prophecy that was proclaimed at the time and has been carried forward from 1244, that the Church of Love, the Church of Amor, would be again proclaimed in about 700 years' time. And that hidden stream of the mystery of love would resurface, and the well would be present for all to drink from. And we are living in that time, I believe. So here is a Cathar prophecy. I invite you to hear this. It's a little long, but each word to me is really important. And when I read the 7 principles that go with Unitarian Universalism, it was very much like our Unity 5 spiritual truths. And this, I believe, is an expression of that. So I believe we are the living church of love, the church of mystery. So the Cathar prophecy. It has no fabric, only understanding. It has no membership, save only those who know they belong. It has no rivals because it is uncompetitive. It has no ambition, it seeks only to serve. It has no boundaries, for nationalisms are unloving. It is not of itself because it seeks to enrich all groups and religions. It acknowledges all the great teachers of all the ages who have shown the truth of love. Those who practice the truth of love in all their beings. There is no walk of life or nationality that is a barrier. Those who are, know. It seeks not to teach, but to be, and by being, to enrich. It recognizes that the way we are may be the way of those around us because we are all of that way. It recognizes the whole planet as a being of which we are a part. It recognizes that the time has come for the supreme transmutation, the ultimate alchemical act of conscious change of the ego into a voluntary return to the whole. It does not proclaim itself with a loud voice, but in subtle realms of loving. It salutes all those in the path who have blazoned the path and paid the price. It admits no hierarchy or structure, for no one is better than another. Its members know each other by their deeds and being and by their eyes, and by no outward sign save a fraternal embrace. Each one will dedicate their life to the silent loving of their nature and the environment and the planet, whilst carrying out their task, however exalted or humble. It recognizes the supremacy of the great idea that can only be accomplished if the human race practices the supremacy of love. It has no reward to offer here or in the hereafter, save the ineffable joy of being and of loving. Each shall cause to seek the advance of understanding, doing good by stealth, and teaching only by example. They shall heal their neighbor, their community, and our planet. They shall know no fear and feel no shame, and their witness shall prevail over all odds. It has no secret, no arcanum, and no initiation, save that of the true understanding of the power of love. And that, if we want it to be so, the world will change. But only if we change ourselves first. Only those who belong, belong. They belong to the Church of Love, the Church of Amor. And now special music.
And he spread over the land.
Thank you. I've always loved that song. I think we're all praying for rain these days and that peace abides on earth soon. Oh, well, I wanted to do a message today, and I debated as to what I was going to do it on, and then I realized it was February, which is traditionally the month of love with Valentine's Day. And so I decided what I wanted to share with you was about the Church of Amor, about the Church of Love, that recognizes that in our humanity, that is just as sacred as our level of spirit and soul. We're not separate from that. They are woven together, just as we are woven into the matrix of the creative universe that is the oneness of all. The Church of Amor is the Church of Love. It is a reframing. It's actually predated the classical Church of Roma, that is doctrine and theology that was decided in councils, many of which I would love to have been a little fly on the wall as to how they decided what. And they were not exactly inclusive councils either. And so with the traditional theology, the divine feminine was basically repressed and left out. And even though Mary Magdalene, in all four Gospels, in the canonical Gospels, is the first one to see the risen spirit of her beloved Jesus, she's hidden in plain sight. For centuries, she was ignored, in fact, was put down. Pope Gregory in the 6th century said Mary Magdalene was the prostitute. And he did that, and because of the belief of the infallacy of the Pope, whatever he said was considered accurate. And this was the theological stance on Mary Magdalene from the 6th century until 1969, when the church changed its policy from the level of the Vatican and said that she was not a whore, that was a misinterpretation of the story, and that indeed she was one of the most honored teachers in early Christianity and in the movement that became Christianity. And in 2016, I was absolutely thrilled. I opened up my news thing on my iPad, and the Pope in 2016 officially declared Mary Magdalene as the apostle to the apostles. The Apostolorum was a decree that he said. And so this divine feminine energy that's always been part of the spiritual path of most traditions. As a child, I would go with friends. My dad was an atheist and my mother was an agnostic, and I was this strangely spiritual kid. So I would go with friends to different things, and one of my favorite places to go was to Catholic High Mass. Not because I understood or agreed with the theology, but I loved the energy. And I loved the candles and the music, and I loved most of all the little chapel hidden in a niche on the side where Mary was, and you could light a candle. So that divine feminine, you can't repress it. As Ron said, we've studied the Black Madonnas that are found. And so the Church of Amor is a church that embraced not only the man Jesus on his mission as great teacher, but Mary Magdalene as well as his companion and cohort. It helps us reframe Christianity from, rather than being redeemed from sin, we are actually saved by transformational love that invites us to see ourselves, the world, and one another through different eyes, that is deeply an incarnation of the essence of divine presence. The transcendent power of love is what is held in the story, for love accompanied the man Jesus all the way through the path of his life, from his birth with Mary opening to say, let it be done according to thy will. Let me be a vessel of the divine presence, of kindness, of love. All the way through the cross with Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, and perhaps John at the foot of the cross. Love is what allowed them to be present no matter what was going on. And it was through the eyes of love that even though he had left his physical body, she could still see and commune with him, as I know many of us have done with loved ones that have gone before us. There are times where we can still feel them so close in heart, it is as though they are sitting right next to us. This is a time of the rising of the whole concept of the power of love. A Course in Miracles is one many people have studied. In the last few years, a new text has come out that's a course of love. And it said the Course in Miracles was to teach you how to change your thinking and your perceptions. This is to drop it into your heart, where you live it and embody it. And that's the calling of this time. So that's why I think we're living in the Church of Amor of the new millennium. It's in and through us. The Magdalene consciousness arrived before I went to ministerial school. I had lunch with a dear friend of mine, and he gave me a book called Holy Blood, Holy Grail that had been published over in Europe. It hadn't been published here yet, and he gave me a copy. And that was the first time I really read about the possibility of Magdalene being more. And as soon as I started to read it and think about it, I went, of course, with the Jewish tradition. People say it doesn't say in the Bible that he was married. By the Jewish tradition, it would have been assumed that he was. It would have been an aberration and something to note if he was not. And I was living here in Port Townsend in the daylight apartment of the Goldsmith's house when I first got here. As we were waiting to see if we were going to move to Port Townsend or not, I opened the New York Times book section, one of my favorite things to look at. And it talked about a new book that had just come out called The Da Vinci Code. I called the bookstore at 10 o'clock when it opened. Do you have this? They said, yeah, we got 2 copies in. I said, put my name on it, I'll be down. I spent the next 2 days just curled up in bed reading it. And the thing that I loved was that this Magdalene path, this Church of Amor that I was studying and believed in so deeply, had hit the mainstream. It even turned into a movie with Tom Hanks. I mean, that you can't get any more mainstream than that. And I went to a meeting at the Catholic Church here in town after that had come out and been so popular, because I love to be open to other viewpoints and just see how are people looking at things. And the priest, the first thing he said was, how many of you have read the Da Vinci Code? And probably 3/4 of the place raised its hand. And he said, that's where you started off wrong. He said it was not on the list of approved books by the Vatican. As a matter of fact, it was on the books that you should not touch. Which, of course, for me, as kind of a free spirit, you tell me I shouldn't read something, guess what I do? So it's been so exciting to see that. And I decided I wanted to really go explore the south of France and the legends of Magdalene, not just reading them in books, but going and really experiencing it. And so I went with my mother and 2 friends, and we got there. We went to Sainte Maryse de la Mer, where, according to legend, is where she came ashore. There's a beautiful Black Madonna in the lower crypt that is called Sarah, who the local women come to and pray with and talk to every day. It was just beautiful to watch that happen. And the other thing that I wanted to do was to go to the Cave of Magdalene that's at St. Baume, up in the mountains. And it is this amazing cave. It's fairly large, and just like most caves, you walk in and it has that damp smell. And you could see the different variegations of green and gray on the walls, and it's big. It has 2 layers. And there's actually a spring in the very back of it where there is fresh water all the time. And so I wanted to go to this cave that, according to legend, Magdalene went at the end of her life and was there for many years, and people came to her for teaching and for healing and to just be in her presence. There was actually an article in the Time magazine where they were talking about the different apostles, and even though she wasn't official yet, they included her. And they asked the priest there, they said, "Do you believe Mary Magdalene was actually in this cave?" And he said, "I don't know, but I do know that people come and her spirit is here." And so I was blessed to go to the cave, and going up, I followed the signs, which takes you up this rocky, steep path up through the woods. And it gets rockier and steeper as you go up. And then you finally get up to the top, and there are all these stairs that take you up to the cave. And there's an entrance there, and you don't realize it because they're kind of gray from the outside and covered to protect them. But you step inside into the cave, and you experience the cave, and then when you turn around to get ready to leave or just to look around, there are these beautiful stained glass windows. There's the Magdalene at the top, and then there are 3 on each side. And I just thought they were beautiful. I took pictures of them, and then on the way back down, I was going back by myself because my mom was in the car at the bottom. And I felt like I needed to get back to her. So I start down through that jagged wooded path, and I slip and I fall and I break my leg. All by myself. One of the things that I heard as I fell, "Turn your head to the left," which I did, and I missed getting a great big rock hit in the back of my head because I turned my head. The other thing, "Hold on to your camera." I would not have thought of that on my own. Hold on to the camera, and I did. And when I laid there on the ground and had the classic person that was raised in any kind of semi-Christian church, what did I do wrong? Did I not pray good enough that I'm on the ground here? And this presence came and said, "No, dear one, this is a blessing." How many of us have had hidden blessings in the midst of challenges? And so I got home. I luckily had travel insurance, which I normally didn't have. So I get home, and I've got a huge cast on my leg up on pillows, and I had this intuitive presence that said, "Look at the pictures from your trip. Look at the pictures of the cave." So I went back and I looked at them. And what I got immediately was this sense of Mary Magdalene. And she said, those 6 windows are how to live the presence of love in life. Each one is encoded with intricate symbols. Where I actually did a series where we looked at each window. And each one is how we live this calling to a church of love. And the windows are a template for the reconciliation of masculine and feminine, of embodiment and spirit, of wholeness in relationship and connection to all of life. It's becoming the Grail, the masculine and feminine together. The first 3 of the windows are about being in the world and embodied. How do we do this with one another? The second 3 are about the soul path aspect. How do we walk even more deeply with one another in this world? The first 3 windows are, number 1 is the marriage. And by tradition, it was the groom who provided the meal at the wedding. And Mother Mary says, we're out of wine. And so Jesus does his first miracle. That doesn't happen until he has come into sacred union and oneness with the divine feminine counterpoint, the priestess to his priest, the Sophia to his rabbi. Once they are united in oneness, that's when the first miracle happens. It represents the sacred union we can have with one another when we commune deeply. It's not by accident that we share food in communion. In the ancient times, that meant you could not do anyone harm if you shared table with them. So the marriage is talking about to really consciously connect with another person. The second is the foot washing, where Magdalene is on the ground washing his feet as he sits. And that one is about bringing compassion and tender, loving care, earthly blessings to one another as we walk through this world together. He was so touched by that is part of the final scene in the upper room. He does the foot washing and then communion. And it's an act of humility and an act of deep, deep caring. The third is the anointing, and in that window, she is above him, giving him a blessing. That is when, in relationship, we see each other more truly and more completely. There's a moment in the Grail legends where the knights are all sitting around the table with Arthur, and a light appears in the middle of the table, and the Grail descends right in their midst. And there's a beautiful story from the 12th century that said when that happened, they'd been fighting before, I'm the best knight, no, I'm the best knight. And when that Grail descended, they looked through each other through the light of the Grail, and they all saw one another with the eyes that perceived the individual light that each one was. And that set them off on the Grail quest to find the Grail out there somewhere, forgetting that it's truly in here. So this is about divine awareness of one another. The soul path and the spiritual aspects come in the last three. The first is the cross, and Mary Magdalene is there at the foot of the cross. This is where we abide with one another through all of the experiences and challenges that life brings. To really have someone companion you is one of the greatest blessings there is. The next window is the resurrection, where she is looking down and he appears. And at first, she's in such deep grief, she doesn't even recognize him. And he speaks and she hears his voice, and then she knows who it is. The resurrection is about allowing each of us to grow and change and shift as we move through life. We want to transform and grow. And one of the great blessings is to have someone who will watch you transform, still see you and love you as you change through the various experiences that life brings. And the final window is the ascension, where he returns to spirit and she remains behind in the embodied world. And this is that higher soul connection that we have with one another, and that we have the opportunity to live that. The two of them with these windows embody the creation of the Grail. And I love that you have a chalice here that you light. A Grail is classically a chalice that has the bowl and the stem. The top is a circle that is open to the heavens. The bottom is a circle that is grounded on the earth. The very shape and archetypal image of the Grail of the chalice is saying be open to the spirit, to creative energies. Be the bowl that's the divine feminine, that's the womb that holds them and will pour them forth. Be the stem that embodies and takes it all the way to the ground where we embody it and we walk that which we believe. The Church of Amor's symbol is that of the Grail. The Church of Roma is that of the cross. The Grail is such an archetypal symbol. As Ron shared, he and I did a class years ago on it, and we might need to repeat that sometime because it was really wonderful and a lot of fun. And so the Grail is a very ancient symbol. It goes back through old world spiritual traditions, from the Druidic cauldron to the cauldron of An Wen to the hollow vessel of the Tao. It's a universal symbol, and it's brought into our modern times by a very uniquely qualified person, which is Professor Brody in Steven Spielberg's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You got to make this stuff real, and it's there. It's hidden in plain sight. Professor Brody, when Indy gets his father's Grail journal, they actually had one that was a copy, a replica of that. I wanted it so bad, but I didn't have $20,000 to spend to get it. So I've just created my own Grail journal over the years. But Professor Brody, in a Steven Spielberg mainstream movie, says this: "The search for the cup of Christ is the search for the divine in all of us." Don't you love that? I love that. Corinne Helene says something wonderful in her book, Mysteries of the Holy Grail. She wrote this in 1963. She wrote another wonderful book called Mystery of the Christos, where she takes the Christian mystery and takes you through the astrology, through all the different deeper aspects of its symbology. But Mysteries of the Holy Grail is one of my favorite books of hers. And I want to read this in closing to all of you before I do a little blessing. "Whenever in the world, regardless of race, color, creed, or caste, there is anyone, whether alone or in a group, working earnestly with deep spiritual intent for world betterment and the uplifting of God's creatures upon this planet, there the Grail descends, bestowing gifts of power and illumination, and its nearness is known in ever-increasing measure in the benediction of love, peace and beauty, wisdom and strength. We are all on the path of the Grail. We are all part of the Church of Amor, and we have our truths and our principles to guide us along the way, and we are blessed to be able to companion one another. Let us do it more lovingly and more consciously than ever before. That, I believe, is the sole lesson of these challenging times that we're in the midst of right now. So I'd like to give you a closing blessing. From this moment, know that you walk not alone, for the presence of the divine in fullness of expression abides with you always and forever. May you see it in the beauty of nature all around you. May you experience it in loving connection to those who cross your path, and may you see it shining forth clearly from your own eyes. May this path of grace remind you that you are equally blessed and blessing. May your willingness to be the light of the world bring the warmth of love, the illumination of wisdom, and the radiance of spirit to all of your days. May you know that your soul is honored, your presence is celebrated, and your gifts are deeply appreciated. Abide in peace always. We pray for the rain, and the rain comes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Pam, for your message today. And remember, she's agreed to stay after if you would like to have conversation after we have some coffee. We will now repeat our closing words together. You find them in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the loving joy of being fresh together. We carry that joy until we meet again.